Yeah, there's nothing really standard because, like you said, each community is its standalone ecosystem.
We have a few communities that are, we're neighbors. Our property lines practically touch.
Regardless of the fact it's a great property or it's a decent buy, if you don't have the right plan in place or you don't have the tools to execute on your plan, you haven't done anybody any favors because you're not going to be able to move that forward. And we're back on the MHP Exchange Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me, of course, is my co-host and partner, Eric Busuttil. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm good today, Frank. How are you doing, Kirby?
Well, Eric, we back on the podcast today. We have a really good program today and something really special. As you know, we do this podcast for community owners, by community owners, where we can share information, we can exchange ideas, learn tips, learn things that are happening inside the industry and give you insight so you can just operate your communities better. And obviously what leads that is a lot of questions that we get from people who subscribe and who are part of the MHPExchange.com. So today we're really excited. We have a very special guest. We have Kirby Horton from the firm. The firm is a company out of Tennessee. They've been in business for quite a while. I mean, they've been involved with hundreds of mobile home communities. They've encompassing thousands of lots. And we're really pleased and honored to have Kirby Horton, who's the CEO of the firm, joining us today. Kirby, how are you?
Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Eric. Doing fine. Thanks.
I see you're just not a owner. You're an owner operator. You're actually coming to us live from in a home that you've just set in one of your communities, and we're going to love to hear about that a little bit later on. But that's what the firm does. I mean, you're out there, you're in the field, and that's why we thought you would be a great guest to have on this program. And before we get into what you're doing right now, for those of you that are listening that do not know Kirby or maybe haven't heard about the firm, Kirby, why don't you just give us a little bit about your background and how you even entered into this space?
Sure, Frank. Like most of us, if not all of us, it's not something that we aspire to unless you're a generational owner, which I'm not. So it's certainly nothing I aspired to, and it's nothing I ever took a course in college. It's something that we just somewhat purposely, but also accidentally slipped into. My wife and I spent a good portion of our adult life in the employee benefits arena, health insurance, pension plans, that type of thing. And then probably 15, 18 years ago, we recognized the changing environment there, and we were looking for something that we had a little bit more control over, where we could control our own destiny, maybe wake up in the morning and write our own game plan of what we want to do and how we want to do it and who we want to do it with. We made a vow that we weren't going to ever work with mean people. We didn't want to work with people that we didn't enjoy working with. And so far, for the most part, we've been able to stick to that. And so we started out real small time working as a Lonnie dealer. We bought one home. Number 13 was the lot number. Paid $800 for it, rehabbed it, and we sold it on terms, for a 48-month term. It worked out really well. So then we did a second and a third, and eventually we got up to where we probably had 50 or 60 homes on monthly payments. The monthly payments were $250 a month for 48 months. And then I realized that I wanted to own the dirt. I wanted to be in the park business because I realized in the hierarchy of payments, they get paid first usually. And so the park business is where we started gravitating toward. We allowed those rent to own contracts to run off the books and basically didn't replace them. And it was actually a good thing, considering that about the time they ran off the books is when the Dodd-Frank Act came in. the SAFE Act.
Got it.
And so about the same time that our portfolio of rent to owns were running off the books, that legislation came through. So we breathed a sigh of relief there that we didn't have to look at doing any workarounds on that or anything. If you all remember, Eric and Frank, that there was a lot of energy, a lot of brain power, a lot of legal dollars spent right after the SAFE Act came out. Everybody's scrambling, trying to be compliant, but yet nobody really knew what compliant was. We weren't given very good directions from DC, and everybody, there was a lot of good money spent on advice that was questionable, in my opinion. So we got out of that business. We started into the mobile home park business, and basically what we were doing, Eric and Frank, we were looking for opportunities to improve people's lives, to make a change, to build a better community for people to grow up, for children to grow up in, for parents to raise their families in. And so we were looking for opportunities that were underappreciated assets, distressed assets, assets that needed a major facelift. Sometimes we get in there and we found out it was more than just a facelift. We found out that it was actually some major surgery that needed to be done, some heavy lifting. And every community that we go into, we learn a whole lot more. We realize we know more than we did before, but we also know that we have a whole lot more to learn. So that's about where we are today.
And that's such a great point, Kirby. And I'm sure every surgery is a little bit different, right? So you get in there and there's always something a little bit different about each community, whether it's the resident base, whether it's the age of the homes, but you're always, I guess that's in every business also. You're just always learning, but that's a great point.
Yeah, there's nothing really standard because, like you said, each community is its standalone ecosystem, just from the topography of the ground to the resident and the makeup and the culture that's already existing. But when you're doing all this, right? So you're starting as a Lonnie dealer, you still have your other profession that you're in. So you're in health benefits. You already have, I'm sure there was a point, right? Like a aha moment.
Use the word.
No, I'm not going to use that word because it's not right.
To.
I was about to. I was almost going to use that word, and it's not right. So I wasn't going to use it. Okay. So it is. There's a point where you say, "Here's my." I'm going to use the word because Eric always says this word. I'm going to say it. It's transgression, even though it's not correct, right? So it's there's a transition point where you say, "I'm ready to take the jump. I'm leaving a business that you're in, that's established, that's." Probably earning you a decent enough living where you could do something else. And you say, you know what? I am committed to being a full-time operator. What was that moment? Like, where was that point in your development in the manufactured housing space that you said, this is it. I'm going to make that pivot. I'm going to take that jump and I'm leaving the past behind and I'm moving forward just in manufactured housing.
Right. I wish I could say that there was this one pivotal wake up in the morning, second cup of coffee, aha moment. But there just wasn't. It was a gradual over a period of time that it became more reliable, the income from the manufactured housing industry. The income started quickly approaching the career that we had, my wife and I both. And when we were probably about 50% of our previous income is basically when we made the jump. So we wanted to make the jump. We wanted to be a little uncomfortable because I think being a little uncomfortable creates necessity. It creates creativeness. It certainly creates drive. We've got 5 children. We had, college age kids and, the American dream and all that. So it really, when you have that motivation there, your passion and motivation come together. And I think, it probably took us, I don't know, Eric, maybe 7 years into it before we jumped full time into the arena.
And Kirby, another thing I'd like to say that we have in common is, kind of our story as well is, and we've been working at this for about 8 years now, 9 years, going on 9 years. And it's starting, well, it's kind of overpowering. We see where the direction is going and what we're looking to do. And one thing, Kirby, when we met, and the first time we met was a few months ago, I realized that, we had a lot of things in common. You mentioned to me that, I think I don't know if you were leaving there to go home, but you had like a packed schedule over the next few weeks where you were traveling, and you mentioned a bunch of places that you were traveling. And I think in talking to you and in the last couple of years, I mean, your company and you, we kind of been crossing paths. I know we're neighbors on a community in one town. I mean, and you got a pretty big company at this point, right? How do you, what would you say is the, I don't want to say the pinnacle, but how have you been able to grow this much in where your communities, your communities are, they're not within a couple of minutes of each other. They're in different markets, different areas. And are you on the road constantly?
People, the team is what makes it. It's nice to hear. It's embarrassing sometimes and humbling, to hear your name and to get the accolades and to have well, you do great work. And in reality, my work was acquiring and the right crew, the right people. And it's the team that really has created the firm. The firm is not a one-man show. It's not a one-woman show. It's not even 2 or 3 people. I'd like to think that the firm is an organization that can survive the demise of any one person. We've got it built in such a way that we have the marketing side, we've got operations, we've got acquisitions, we've got install side. There's just right now, I think we're hovering somewhere around 50 employees total. And that includes the corporate level and at the community level. So I think, my wife and I love to travel, number one. So that's nice. We also like each other, which is really nice too. Especially when you travel as much as we do. And we do have children and grandchildren scattered around the Southeast. So we do try to coordinate our travels with family visits. That's very, very important to us. And I think, and Eric, you're right. We have a few communities that are, we're neighbors. Our property lines practically touch. In fact, one of them we might even touch. I'm not sure. So we do have a lot in common. You and Frank and I. In terms of the communities that we're in, and you all know that they are. They're not they're not primary markets. A lot of them aren't even secondary. They're tertiary or even rural markets. And I learned a long time ago, the best way, it's really nice to be successful in markets that other people overlook. And the underserved, not just the underserved people, but the underserved communities. And it's my vision, and I hope everybody in our company shares this vision. I don't know where it came from, but it sticks in my head. One day in the future, 15, 20, 30 years from now, I want some young woman, young man, who's starting his own or her own family to reminisce and talk about the community that they grew up in. I don't want them talking about or being embarrassed about the trailer park that they grew up in. I want that young man, that young woman who grew up in one of our communities, I want them to have very fond memories of growing up in that community. It was a safe community. It was a clean community. Their parents enjoyed and loved being there. They mingled with the other children in the community. Again, community is the key word. And I think that's really, that's possibly my biggest driver right now is making sure that we have communities like that where the kids can run around barefoot in the front yard and not worry about, stubbing their toe the strap down or the anchor from the previous home that was there, or stepping on glass or anything like that. So, building better communities is really what we're about.
One of the most satisfying things, I believe, for me is, whenever you pick up a property such as, ones that we work on, there's always that person who either still lives in the community or is from the town, and they're like, wow, I remember this community, 40 years ago. And, this was the best town around,
best spot in town.
And we come in and you meet that person, and then a couple years later you always have someone also that's like, wow, you really brought this back to life. And it's definitely super satisfying. What you said is again spot on. You want these people to remember you not just as property owner or landlord, but somebody who is there and helped create an environment that they want to live in their family.
And you impact their lives in so many different ways, because they're living there. And typically when your resident is in that community, they don't want to leave. There's something else that keeps the manufactured housing resident in that community longer. It's that sense of community, right? It's because you could easily buy a lot, go somewhere else, and you could be off on your own, but people like living together. We're social animals, right? We want to be around other people, and being in that community when it's well run and it has that feeling, it really keeps people wanting to stay there because they find the value in the space. I just want to, and I want to ask you some questions about how you pick your markets, but just going back to the scaling up, because, listen, we've seen a lot of, and we've talked to some community owners, especially some recent community owners, and there's a balancing act that you have between your back office admin, your ground, your people on site, and then the crews that you have that handle the maintenance or the install. And, we like to say that this is a business of nickels and dimes. So you have to watch, where every penny is going to, because you're not in the luxury market. You've got a constrained, income stream, call it. So how do you balance that as you scale up to ensure that, hey, I've got the right mix. I want to make sure that we're delivering the product and the service that we want to deliver, but I'm doing it in the most efficient way possible so we can keep doing this, right? So that's that balancing act. Is there a formula that you have? Like how do you view that?
I wish it was a formula. I wish there was a formula. Then I could bottle it and sell it to people. Really, it's Eric and Frank, you all know as well as I do, and most of the people probably watching, a lot of it's trial and error. You also need to be, in my opinion, very, very conservative on your plan. Number one, don't go into something without knowing how you're going to get out of it. Is your strategy long-term hold, intermediate hold, buy and flip? What is your exit strategy? That's one of the things that we always look at. We ask ourselves, when we first look at an opportunity, one of the very first things we look at is, where's the exit? We know how to get in. We know how to do what we do when we get in there, but how do we get out of it? Who's going to, do we want to get out of it? And if we do, who would buy this? If you've got a community out in the Netherlands, somewhere just way out nowhere, and it's on a wastewater treatment plant and a well, and they're all pre-HUD homes, I don't know how you're going to get out of that. That's a tough.
I have to offer that at a discount. That's the only way.
Significant discount. And is it really worth? Because I do want to stress, Eric in particular, you and I were talking about the importance of community and those kids growing up and all that, and the warm and fuzzies, and that's really what drives me. But make no mistake that we are a for-profit company. We're not doing this, as a charity gesture. We are for-profit, and our job is to provide those communities that we discussed, but also to do it profitably, which transitions into what Frank was saying. It's a business of nickels and dimes, and
transitions or
somehow you need
transitions.
we're going to transition it. I don't want to do any transgressions against either one of them, but I do think, it's, turning those nickels and dimes into quarters and dollars. And, one of the things that we do, which I find really important to us, is that we make significant investments into the community before we do any rent increase. I think it's important to put your money where your mouth is. We've got to clean up our mess first before we start asking people to pay more money and to clean up their mess. You two are experienced operators. You know what I'm talking about. You go into a new community, there's trampolines, there's swimming pools, there's vicious breeds of dogs, there's empty tires laying everywhere.
There's craters in the roads where
it's horrible.
You can't drive.
That's right. It's horrible. And, it's hard to ask these people to get rid of their trampolines, which we do. It's hard to ask them to get rid of all of their, used tires, the swimming pool, the vicious breed of dogs, clean up your junk, if we don't clean up our stuff first. So the very first thing we do before we even start sending out rules, violations, and everything is we look in the mirror at ourselves and we say, are we being a good steward? Are we taking care of our business? Are we violating any community rules and regulations on any of our properties? And if we are, let's get it cleaned up before we start cracking down on the residents. Let's get it cleaned up before we start passing on increases. I think it's easier to pass on increases when you've shown an interest in the community and you've added value. A lot of operators, and I don't mean to step on toes here, but a lot of operators think that adding value means increasing rents and or submetering the water. Okay, now, granted, doing those two things will increase the market value of the community, but is it really adding value? You go ask the people that live right next door on either side, is this rent increase or this passing on of the water to you, is this adding value to your life?
Not to them. Not to them. And and I think you hit a great point. You have to lead first. And when you do that, I think other things follow and flow, and people will understand why certain things need to happen. You could live in a community that's substandard and pay a under market rent, or, hey, we're going to guide you over time to get to where it needs to be. But your experience is going to be that much better. And new people coming in will obviously appreciate the improvements that have been made. Right. And that's a big key in all of that.
Absolutely.
And I know you mentioned this before, because we actually have had this conversation with, investors. We've had this conversations with people who might look to get into the market. We actually did an episode on this. You are in some tertiary or rural markets. So when you look at a deal beforehand, it's not, are you looking at the market first, like in the area? Are you looking just if the deal itself, and I hate using that word, but if the property itself works for you, like, is there a certain standard or what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg?
Yeah, great question. I'd like to hear your answer. But I'm very easily excited by opportunities, and that's why we have a team effort, in making sure that we vet these opportunities. We never send out a PSA or really even an LOI without somebody from our team putting boots on the ground and looking at that community and the bigger community surrounding that park. I know a lot of people, their MO is to just fire off 10, 15 LOIs a week and hope some of it sticks. Our position is, we really don't want to waste anybody's time, our time included, in preparing an LOI or a PSA, unless we know for sure it's something that we really want. I'm very guilty of traveling to an area, looking at an opportunity, seeing the surrounding community and thinking, this is a pretty cute town. I'd love to be coming down here working on this park. And, I could groove on this. I like this area. But then, we run the test ads. We look at the financials, and on the test ads, we have to have at least one response per hour for it to be viable. If it can't meet one response, one inquiry per hour on the test ads, then it's really not a viable market for us. If I really, really love the market and the deal still looks good, I might go back to our team and ask them to run another test ad or two on a different day of the week or a different type of home or something like that, just to make sure that we didn't, you don't want to run a test ad on Friday before a 3-day weekend,
Sure.
Stuff like that. So, if I really like the bones and I like the way the place looked and the surrounding communities, and the test ad just doesn't work out, I'll get our team to do another one or two just to make sure. But again, if the test ad's not there, there's a lot of things that, as you guys know, there's a lot of things you can fix, but the market is one thing you can't fix. You cannot create demand if it's not there. So that's obviously, a no-go if it doesn't meet that. The financials, quite frankly, most of the stuff that we do, or in fact, everything we do is a turnaround. So the P&Ls are not believable for the most part. A lot of the P&Ls, they're not credible. They're coming from mom and pop operators, which I'm certainly not bagging on them. They've done a good job in the community, and their way of doing business has served them very well. But really, their P&L is of no concern to me, really, because that's not going to be my P&L. It might give us a little bit of guidance into where there might be some issues that we could address, but the P&L from the previous owner really is not going to be a make or break. It's the test ad, the bones, the due diligence. No matter, you could have paralysis of analysis on the due diligence, and you could just due diligence this thing to death and still not uncover everything. Frank, you and I have talked about a few deals where, even after the due diligence was done and done very well, you get into a deal and then stuff happens.
Yes.
And you question yourself and you say, why didn't we uncover this during due diligence? And the answer is, well, not everything is discoverable. Some things are just going to pop up after the fact.
Correct. And then sometimes you're going to look at it as what you want to handle when it comes up. So if you're comfortable with taking on that issue, or if you're not comfortable taking on that issue at that time, if you have the right mechanism, and then obviously if you have the right entry price and plan in place, if that's going to work. But and
exactly.
You mentioned that your focus is on turnarounds. Eric and I think historically, what we've tended to do was turnarounds. When you do look to turn around a community, is there something that you look as a key? Like what is what is something that you look to do to turn that community around?
Probably, gosh, Frank, it's just, there's no one silver bullet. I wish there was again, but it's a combination of the market itself. Is it a viable market? Are we going to be able to fill the number of homes that need to come in? If you've got 150 lots in this community, and 20 of them are POH and park-owned homes, and then 30 of them are TOH, tenant-owned homes, and then the rest are empty lots or dinosaurs that need to be taken to the landfill. You just look at it and say, okay, can we fill can we do what needs to be done in this market? Is the market large enough to fill this number of homes to make it viable? And then there becomes a certain threshold. If we can't hit that number of homes, then the deal just doesn't work. So there has to be that minimum threshold, to make it work. And then obviously, early on, I was scared of lagoons and wastewater treatment plants and water wells, and I still look at them very, very carefully. They're not as bad. They can be better than I used to think. I don't want to say that they can be they can be good. But you as long as you understand the risk and you've got a plan B and perhaps a plan C available, then lagoons, wastewater treatment plants, wells, go in with the knowledge. And if you go in with the knowledge, then I think it's a little bit easier. But again, you have to, if you're going to go in there, you have to remember, how are you going to execute this thing? Who's going to be your, if you're going to sell, who's going to be the buyer when you sell? Or are you going to be able to get financing? Things like that.
So Kirby, in response to Frank's question and his question before in regards to, when you're looking at a community, you could do due diligence to death of a community. But it's not until you get in there where you're able to really get a sense of exactly what is needed, right? And there's a multitude of things that are always needed, whether it's the streets, the condition of the homes,
infrastructure,
the tenant base. But there's something that I like to believe that we do, and that seems like you do, is you're a good maneuverer, right? You go in there, and as you're going along and you're giving to the community before you start to ask from the community, you kind of figure out what it needs, right? Whether it's, a playground and, at the end of the day, most of our residents, we know that they want to live, number one, in a safe community, right? So, that's typically what we really drill on first. And I'm sure it's the same with you. And getting in there,
a clean community.
Yeah. And you can't do that from a distance. You got to be in there. You got to, get to know the residents. You got to clean the community up. You got to get rid of the riffraff. Getting that done first is usually the most important thing for us. And that waste treatment situation, I'll just bring up just a quick story. And you hit it on the head again, Kirby. We were very scared of waste treatment plants or lagoons or whatever you want to call them. I think you purchased a property that we were looking at years ago, and we passed on that community because we didn't have any experience in it, and we were very scared of it. And as time has gone on, and we've learned that it's pretty common, we're not as scared of it anymore. But sure, you're 100% right. You just got to make sure that you really do your research. Have somebody go in there, take a look at it, and what is the plan if you do have issues here? You gotta know what to do.
And it's steps, right? Because you're comfortable with the wastewater treatment plant the way we've gotten comfortable with that. But when we first started out, that would not be the first community we would start with, right? At first you didn't want to do a well and septic. Now if it's a private well, doesn't bother. We understand the process of what needs to be done, what needs to be checked to ensure that you can facilitate the utilities to the residents. Now, and so it's the more comfortable you get in the space, and the more that you've learned and you've gotten that background and infrastructure of people and network that you could go to with questions, then taking on projects like that most people would stay away. It's a little bit easier to step into at that point.
And Kirby, I'd like to hear what your picture is on this. We're in a market right now that's different than it's been for the last, so many years. One thing I'd like to say is that we've kind of forecasted this, and we kind of seen this coming. And once you get into a market like this, everybody's scared, everybody's nervous, regardless of, if you were able to see it coming. And I'm very happy to be in the space that we are in this environment that we are in. And I have, a picture in my mind of what I think is going to happen to this market. Could you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the current environment that we're in?
Well, my thoughts and opinions, and 50 cents might buy you a cup of coffee. Okay. So
not here.
Keep that in mind.
Not here.
Not in New York. So keep that in mind. Eric, like you, I started preaching to our crew probably a little bit over a year ago. It's sad that it came true. I wish I was wrong, but I was predicting to them, what was happening, and that we need to be nimble. We need to be prepared for this because it's going. And I started trying to educate, and I think our people have done a good job understanding that relationship between interest rates and asset values, and understanding that it's not the world. The world today is not the world that we went into 2 or 3 years ago. And some of the plans, some of our business plans a couple of years ago did not forecast. We didn't forecast on some of these communities the interest rates doing what they did. Fortunately, we didn't over leverage. We were relatively conservative going in. In fact, we actually have a couple of parks that we own free and clear, with no debt on it at all. I look at those as our sort of our dry powder. I'd rather have my money in those parks than sitting over in a bank, or even T-notes. And I think that, by having that flexibility of not having your back up against the wall, because unfortunately, I'm fearful that there's a lot of people out there that, the last time interest rates were this high, a lot of these people were in middle school, some of these operators, and they've never seen interest rates do what they've done as quickly as what has happened. And it's probably not over. I hear a lot of younger operators and people in the real estate field say, stay alive to 25. Well, I don't buy that. I think, 25 is optimistic. Unfortunately, I think I don't see 25 probably being much different than 24. That's my opinion. And I think it's just important that you, like Frank said, it's a business of nickels and dimes, and you really have to manage those nickels and dimes. And, the interest rate environment that we're in, is difficult. It's difficult to, the banks are getting, banks have never been, easy to work with. They always loan you money when you don't need it. But now, they'll loan you money. We might get a 75 or 80% LTV or LTC, but then the bank requires that you put deposits. They want deposits also. So, in addition to putting down payments and equity into it, and maybe a 75, 80% LTV, then they also want a couple $100,000 of deposits, for the next 12 to 24 months. And that ties up your equity there.
And like you said, stay alive to 25. Hope is not a strategy. And we started seeing, and we were just talking to and community owner last week, and we went to go see his property. I mean, he raced to close on two properties, but he didn't have the money for the CapEx plan, but he had to close because the rates, the rates was going to expire. But to go back to your earlier point, he didn't have the capital to execute his plan. So now you own the property. It's a, value add turnaround project, but you don't have the capital to execute on the plan to make that property work, regardless of the fact it's a great property or it was a decent buy. If you don't have the right plan in place, or you don't have the tools to execute on your plan, you haven't done anybody any favors, because you're not going to be able to move that forward. But you're in a new home right now. So obviously, even though we have interest rates that are happening, you're still operating, right? You're still bringing in new homes. What are you doing now? Like, is it infill? Is it working on your existing assets? Are you, what is your focus? How have you?
Right. Well, last year we brought in all of the communities that we worked in 2022, we brought in somewhere around 500 new homes, and got them set, got them occupied. So 2022 was a good year. 2023
were those just in your communities?
Yes, the 17 that we're working in. Yep. Then in 2023, that number has gone down to probably 300, 350. We see 2024 as being probably around the same number, maybe just a little bit less than that. One thing that we've done that you and I talked about, the three of us have talked about, and that is over the years, we have developed an incredible team, and we've developed a process that works really well for us. But right now, we're sort of at a point where we have excess capacity of talent. And what we have been hearing over the last couple of years, even before interest rates took off the way they have, whether we were at MHI Leadership Conference up in Chicago, or the IMN conference that they just had in Nashville, or SECO every year, one of the things that we keep hearing is there is a tremendous lack of people or firms that can provide a turnkey solution to the owner-operator's problem of bringing in new homes, the actual boots on the ground. And finally, it's not something that we created. We didn't create this new branch of the company and then hope that there was a market there for it. What we basically did over the last couple of years, after listening to multiple owner-operators complaining about a lack of talent to bring in homes, we started outsourcing or using our services for other owner-operators, where we provide a turnkey service of going in, making sure that the setbacks are proper, making sure that you're permitted for the right number of homes, making sure that the lots are the right size, getting the permits, from the municipality, preparing the lot, setting the home, water, sewer, electrical, slabs that need to be built, AC units installed, skirting, steps, cleaning the interior of the home, doing the seeding and sodding outside, some ornamental shrubbery, basically making the home what it would look like in one of our communities. And so it's a one call, one-stop shop, to get that done. And we've seen, quite a bit of success from that. We've seen it a big welcoming. There's a need for that for owner operators. If you've got a park and you're only bringing in, and I shouldn't say only because that belittles the number, but if you have a park that you're bringing in 10 homes, let's say, and you've never brought in homes before, you have no idea what you don't know.
Yes.
You have no idea. And after 2022 and doing 500 homes, we still don't know everything about bringing in homes, because the one thing I can tell you, we brought in that many homes, but we haven't brought in the next one. And the next one could pose some great learning opportunities for us. And so you just have to keep your eyes open, your ears open, and listen to people, who have been there, done that, and just make sure that you surround yourself with good people. And so by pivoting to, our organization, we're not moving away from owner operator status. We're still, looking for good deals, but because of that excess capacity of talented people and process, we've started offering that as a service to other owner operators. And for a guy who has, the need to bring in 5 or 10 homes this year, it's well worth it, because again, like I said, you really don't know what you don't know until you start bringing in homes. It's just incredible.
Yeah, that's a big key, because the demand for housing is still going to be there. So regardless of what happens, and I think one of the advantages to this space, right, that I don't think gets discussed about as much, especially in this time, you're going to need affordable housing. Now, if you're building, the reason why you're not building, the people aren't building more, multifamily units right now is, well, you have high interest rates. The builder takes on a lot of financial risk. Rates go up if the project sits for a little while, and he's got to carry the project the entire way. And here, in manufactured housing, you could kind of turn on the spigot to meet demand. So if I need 10 homes, I could fill 10 homes. So I can create that multifamily. I could create that additional units without having to take, without having to build an entire new structure, wait 12 months, 18 months for the project to be done. And then obviously Kirby having that additional service. If you haven't done that before, that's a way to speed on. But I know Eric's done a lot of that. For us, he kind of handles that department.
Well, Kirby, and a takeaway that for those of you listening, that is correct. Bringing in 10 homes is a huge undertaking. If you've never done it before, you are going to spend a lot more money than you should on that first go around. So my suggestion is on that first go around is hire somebody who's done it before, learn from them. There's nothing wrong with you obviously rolling up your sleeves and doing it yourself. But you're going to take on a lot in trying to do it yourself the first time if you've never done it before. There are just so many things. And one thing especially is every community is in a different county, right? And it's not until you're in there dealing with a building department who's never brought in a new home, or not never, but who hasn't brought in a new home in 20 years, where, sometimes these, city agencies are, they're not up to speed on what the codes are and, the type of inspections that they want to do. And they're kind of learning on their way also. So if you've never done it before and a home hasn't come in the last couple of years, realize it's going to be a learning curve for you and the county. So bringing in someone like Kirby, especially that first time around, has the knowledge, has the expertise to speed up that process and get it done probably a lot cheaper than you're going to be able to get it done, and quicker.
And time is money, right?
And time.
Because the last thing you want to do is have a home sit there and
that you're paying
on and you can't get it filled, right? So there's a cost.
That's right.
To that time as well, which people don't.
You're absolutely right, Frank, and Eric, you're spot on with your observations on the installation side of it. Frank, on the cost side, we calculate that it runs us roughly $20 to $25 per day for every new home that we bring in that's not occupied, and that's interest and insurance. The interest and insurance cost on that home is going to run you $15 to $25 per day, whether it's occupied or not.
Sure.
And the very first thing you need to do before, once you've pulled the trigger and you bought the community and you own the dirt, you need to be spending hours with the local municipality. You need invite them out to the community, show them your vision, let them know what you're looking to do. Maybe even before you close on the deal, do that. Try to get as much buy-in as you can, recognizing that a lot of municipalities, whether they say it or not, are going to be anti-manufactured home people. They might not verbalize it, but deep down inside, they have a bias against manufactured home communities, and it really irritates me. We do everything that we can to rename our communities and leave the word manufactured and leave the word mobile and leave the word park out of it. In my mind, it's a community, period.
Absolutely.
If you drive into a subdivision that is built with nothing but red brick homes, you don't call that a red brick home community, do you? It's Forest Acres neighborhood or whatever it's called.
Sure.
So why would you call your community a trailer park, or why would you call it a manufactured home community? It's a community, it's a neighborhood.
A great
get
point.
rid of the stigma, get rid of those names. I'm sitting in this home right now that we just got the CO, the certificate of occupancy, a couple of days ago. It'll be occupied next week, and I'm looking. We've got a neighbor on either side of us right now in brand new homes. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, brand new. There is no way in this small community, a couple of hours outside of Atlanta, There's no way that a developer would come in here and build a Class A apartment complex that would be affordable to this community the way this place is. And we're looking at 25 feet separation in between units.
And they have and they have open space. They have their own lot. So it feels like home, which is one of the keys. One of the reasons why people love living in these communities when they're well run and well operated.
That's right.
That's
well said.
The key on this, and the key of, we love seeing, especially when you're in a market and you have other well-run communities, then people expect more, and you kind of change that stigma, which is part of the process and changing the culture inside.
Very well said.
And Kirby, thank you so much for all of this useful information. I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge. Another key thing that I love about being in this space is I feel, and I've, we've done other things in our existence, but being in a space like this where we could share and learn from each other is awesome, and we really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today, and we hope that you'll be on here again with us in the future, and just if there's anything you ever need,
give us a call.
Please give us a call, and we know that we have you if we need something, and I know we're talking about possibly doing some stuff together. Thank you so much for your time today, Frank.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Kirby. This has been a great program. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss some of the things that we see in the space. And like Eric said, we'd love to have you back on at some point. And for those listening, if you want more information, go to the mhpexchange.com. You'll get some, video clips of this episode. You can download the episode there and also get some news that's happening inside the industry, recent news, find out information on recent closings.
Yeah. And just one more thing I just want to share about Kirby for anyone listening. He also, his firm also helps community owners do this process outside of his communities. So if you're a new community owner and you are looking to set some homes, I believe Kirby is definitely the guy to call.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Frank and Eric, again, you guys are a class act. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Kirby. And thank you for listening. This has been another episode of the MHP Exchange Podcast. Until next time.